Welcome to Adapted, the podcast where we explore adaptations of various forms. I'm today's host, Tom, and with me is...
Pat.
Today we'll be discussing A Midsummer Night's Dream from circa 1595-96, the 1935 adaptation from Max Reinhardt, the 1968 adaptation from Peter Hall, and the 1999 adaptation from someone named Michael Hoffman.
Is that a diss at Michael Hoffman, or is
Well,
he
just
really
it's
not famous? I don't know who he is. Is he?
Yeah, I think well, compared to the others, he certainly isn't.
Okay,
Right?
fair enough. I didn't know if this was a oh no, Michael Hoffman's really famous, and I'm like, oh, I've never heard of them. Okay,
Yeah, I don't know very much about him.
totally fine.
He made a film called Promised Land, which
I feel like I'm fake. I feel like I heard of that one.
yeah, he also did the
Oh no, I'm thinking Neverland. Never mind.
oh no, but he also did the last. Apparently, I have not seen this, but he did the Last Station, which was about the last years of Leo Tolstoy's life, and apparently it is excellent.
Oh, that's cool. And I know what that's a reference to because he died at a train station. Leo Tolstoy did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's I think it has actually a star from this week. Helen Mirren, I think, plays his wife in it. So I'm told that is, I haven't seen it, but I'm told that's a very excellent
Tolstoy
movie.
has a fascinating life. I would
Yeah,
actually. I mean, he was like writing with Gandhi. He was like exchanging letters with with a young Gandhi.
oh, really?
Yeah, there's weird stuff with him. Yeah, he basically was like writing Tolstoy was writing letters to Gandhi about pacifism and like nonviolent resistance during this period. And then yeah, like Tolstoy went off, like, basically sort of went off the deep end and was running around trying to be a religious nut and was trying to give away the family fortune, and the wife was like trying to keep it. And I know he has a very interesting later life, but I'm
Yeah,
going to
his
see.
philosophy, I mean, he's like what we call a Christian anarchist,
Yeah.
which is very interesting, and I find a lot of his political thinkings very intriguing. So,
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I agree with him, but man, is he great. He's just got interesting thoughts and
yeah.
lived a very interesting later part of his life. So I should actually watch that. So anyway, now I
Anyway,
know a little more about Michael Hoffman.
Michael
So good.
Hoffman, yeah, but he isn't quite the accomplished director that like Max Reinhardt or Peter Hall are. So that's my little dig at Michael Hoffman. I'm sorry, Michael Hoffman. I hope you forgive me. But anyway, a little fact we'll talk about today. Talking about boy actors. So back in Shakespeare's day, women didn't play on stages. You know, they didn't play. It wasn't legal until 1660. So boys between the age of 10 and 15 played female roles, and this is because this is before their voices broke. Typically, they lived with senior actors who watched over them. In Shakespeare's company, we had two boys we know about who worked with the company between 1596 and 99, whose names we don't have anymore. But we know Shakespeare wrote Midsummer with them specifically in mind because one of those boys was unusually tall and the other one was unusually short. And so apparently he wrote
Those
those
jokes make
roles.
sense now.
Yeah, wrote for them in mind.
Was part of, I mean, you might know this more. Was part of the humor that the audience, I mean, obviously the audience knew, was part of the humor based on that the audience knew that these were boys, or
I,
was it just like no, they just they treated them like it was like a female actor?
I think they treated it like it was a female actor. I
Okay.
think unless you're getting a joke that's specifically referencing that this person is a boy, I don't think it works. I've heard arguments. I saw once a scholar present an argument that's saying that any interaction between a male and a female character is satire or parody because of how silly it would be.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Like, how much
But
did they accept it?
yeah, but how would you make every scene between Romeo and Juliet
No, I don't think that's true.
parody? It
I
doesn't
don't
make
think
any
that's true.
sense.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's actually true. But I didn't know if that was a. I guess it's true with the tragedies. It certainly doesn't work, and even in the comedies, like you kind of, for the most part, it seems like you accept it.
Yeah, I mean, if he kept I also think about how annoying it would be if in what
It would be
10
the same joke
comedies,
over and over and over and
yeah,
over
he'd
again.
be
Yeah,
making
you
that
can't.
joke all the time. So eventually it's just kind of like you gotta let it go, guys, and go for it.
Okay. Anyway, I
So
was just curious.
it seemed like they accepted it pretty easily. We do have one thing I found was a letter from one of these boy actors, and it was a boy actor in the Admiral's Men. So it wasn't in the Lord Chamberlain's Men, which was Shakespeare's company, but the Admiral's Men. Excuse me, no, the Lord Strange's Men, and he lived with the really famous actor Edward Allen. His name was John Pike. His nickname for some reason was Pig. And we have a letter from him from 1593 that survived. 1593, there was a major plague in London. And so the Lord Strange's Men went on tour. They went up to Bristol in order to do plays. And so Pig wrote back to his mother about his experiences with Edward Allen in Bristol and talked about how he apparently he referred to somebody as his wife, but that was just a term that meant girlfriend or somebody you were having sex with at the time, and about how much he apparently Edward Allen was pretty good dude, pretty good to him, and he hung out in Bristol. So we have this like little document about what it was like to be one of these boy actors who worked for these companies.
Do we know, did any of them stay on after their
Most of them
voices
not.
changed or no? Yeah.
Some did, most of them not. So once their voices, so apprenticeships in England would be about 7 years. That was kind of what you're signed on for. They started around age 16. So having what is effectively an apprenticeship start at 10 is weird, but you could change careers if you didn't want to be an actor because by 15, 16 you were done. You either
Hmm.
became a quote unquote legitimate actor or an adult actor, or you became a
Something
craftsman
else, yeah.
or something else. Yeah. So it seems like most of them didn't. And I don't have any actors in mind who actually we know started off as
Yeah,
boys.
that's what I was wondering. Do we know
Yeah.
of them? But no.
Yeah, it seemed like not we had a lot of people who stay on as like minor roles, stagehand type things. Maybe they were boys, but like the big dogs don't seem to have necessarily started that way. A lot of the big dogs seem to have started as tradesmen who were like, screw this, I want to be an actor. Sort of like me in college, I guess. Uh,
Like many actors.
yeah,
Like Harrison
exactly.
Ford was a carpenter, wasn't he? On like the
He
sets.
was. He
Yeah.
was a carpenter. Yeah. So women didn't appear on stage until 1660. But there's one exception I found. This woman, Mary Firth, Frith, and she was born in the 1580s, and she was really famous, like incredibly famous in London circles for dressing like a man and robbing people at St. Paul's. That's what she liked to do.
I love that time period.
Yeah.
What a combination of terrible time to be alive and really funny period to be alive.
But that's what she did. Um and she was arrested 4 times. She also worked as a pimp for both men and women. Like she got married women, like dudes to sleep with. She was arrested 4 times, but somewhere it's either I've seen one source say 1610, another say 1611. She appeared on stage in the Fortune Theater. They wrote a little role for her so she could sing and play a lute. I couldn't find the play, but
I imagine it wasn't very good. This was like having Lady Gaga in your movie,
yeah,
probably. It's
yeah.
just like this movie's probably not going to be
I
great.
think
This
it was
play is
just
probably not going to
like
be great.
but she was really famous. They wrote 2 major plays about her. One of them I've read. It's called The Roaring Girl, and it's actually worth reading. It's by Decker and Middleton. And
I like Middleton.
yeah, yeah, it's worth it. It's funny. It's just a kind of bonker. It's one of these like plays like what the hell? What the hell is it? And when you read her story, you're like, oh, okay, this is this is where this is coming from. But it was one of these kind of like social events that the Roaring Girl came out of. And interesting about her, so she went to Bedlam for 2 times. But apparently she was cured of her insanity. She died in 1659, and you will not
She
guess.
had a good life.
She
It's a
died
good lady.
74. Yep,
Yeah.
1659. You will not guess who wrote the epigraph on her gravestone.
In what year?
1659.
Oh gosh. I don't know.
John Milton.
Oh gosh. Wow. I would know. Gosh, no, I would
Never
not
got.
have
I
got
would
that
have
one.
never guessed that either.
I mean, he was a weird dude. I could see him. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
he.
is that why? Was it just because he was weird? He was
I
a
don't.
weird dude.
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe she paid handsomely. I mean, he wrote. It was less than 10 years before Paradise Lost, or Paradise Lost is 1660s, like 1668, I think. Um,
I mean, I've never actually read it, to be honest.
yeah.
It's there's a little. Sometimes my patience has its limits.
Yeah. My favorite criticism of Paradise Lost is always no one ever wished it was longer.
This is the problem with
Yeah.
it. I remember I think I started it. I think I read like 10 pages and went, I have I just have better things to do.
Yeah, I Milton's political writing is pretty interesting. He's the first person to really argue for free speech and also argue for divorce. Even though he wasn't divorced, he made pretty sound arguments for both of those things. And his Areopagitica, which is his argument for free speech, sort of, I think, is an influence on the founding fathers in a big way.
I could see that, yeah.
Yeah, but he's an interesting case because he's Puritan. He comes from them, but he's not really. He's kind of doing his own thing, and so on. He's a weird dude, but he's an
Yeah,
interesting
that's
dude.
just some of the stories I've heard about him with his daughter. Wasn't he have his daughter like he would recite the poetry to his daughter or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Because he was
He was blind, and he
he
would
was
say,
blind, yeah.
"I milk me." That's what he would tell
Yeah,
her.
it's just ever hearing stories about it and thinking, wow, maybe this poetry will just be worth it. And then I read it, I'm like, I mean, I know it's probably worth it. I know there is great things here, but it's very long.
It's
And iambics, just iambics can get a bit brutal after that long.
Mm. Yeah, he is more consistent with his iams than Shakespeare
Yeah,
by
he is.
far.
It is the most iambic thing I have ever seen. Like it is so by the book. I tend to always think of the Donald Sutherland one with the like, is Milton saying that the devil is more fun? Have you seen in Animal House? I think it's Animal House, isn't it?
Oh, I don't think I've seen all of Animal House.
I think it's Animal House, and they have him sitting there, and he's going. It's Donald Sutherland going. He's supposed to be the English professor, and he says something like, "Is Milton saying that the devil is more fun than God, or something like that?" And he's like trying to ask the class, and then he finally just goes, "Yeah, I'm with you. It's really boring." Essentially, and I don't care either. And I just kind of feel like that when I read my 10 pages of Milton and went, it's like riding a horse.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for it.
I am
So
Bo.
yeah, I am Bo. Every word must be I am Bo, the iambic robot. Like it's Milton's fine.
Uh,
So anyway,
anyway,
Milton wrote the lady pimp's tombstone. Got it.
yeah. So that had initially this research started with I wanted to know what Bottom's head probably looked like in the first production. Um,
I would actually be curious too. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, I was looking into, I couldn't find anything, but what I found was from Henslow's diary, a list of
props.
properties, a list of props, and they had a ton of things like bear skins and different animal heads, like taxidermy animal heads. And I'm like, oh,
It's probably
it's
that.
probably that. It's probably they probably just made an animal head. I think there's not a lot of scholarship on it because it's probably not that interesting an answer.
When we did it in high school, we had a very, it was a, he was, our bottom again was the best part of the whole thing. And he was tall, like, and I think he was a junior when I was a sophomore. He was probably like 6'1", 6'2". And the donkey head we had was one where you looked through the neck. So, and then the head came up. So this donkey head must have been like 7 feet tall. So it was hilarious because he was pretty good with it as a puppet. So he would be like looking down at Titania with the top of the head like 7 feet tall, and she'd be like trying to talk to this like 7 foot tall donkey head. It was actually pretty funny. And he also had one of the best moments. We did it during it was during dress rehearsals, and he had the donkey head on, and there was supposed to be like somebody was supposed to like lead him to the because he couldn't see that well through it, and someone was supposed to like lead him to Titania's bower, and he ended up walking out, and the whatever the actress wasn't there or something had happened, and so he was like, I think I know where to go. I just need to go like straight, like 6 feet. And he was slightly angled. And I still remember watching him from the wings. And he just kind of walked towards the edge of the stage and just like walked right off down into the pit and was just like, bam, and just like completely. He was fine. But it could have been kind of actually funny if it had happened during the real production. But no, he was fine. But anyway, Bottom's head.
Bottom's Head, yes. So, jumping into Midsummer Night's Dream, yeah, let's jump into the film. So, we'll start with the very old one here, the 1935 Max Reinhardt one. So, this is Max
We should
Reinhardt.
mention it's choreographed by Nijinsky. Like,
Oh, is it? I didn't even realize
yeah,
that.
it's
Oh,
choreographed by Nijinsky.
yeah. Um, it is a he came over not speaking English to LA and staged a version of this with these actors in the Hollywood Bowl, which is a kind of amphitheater space out in Los Angeles. And yeah, it had hundreds of dancers and extras. It was an extremely elaborate production. They used a lot of Mendelssohn's music, or exclusively Mendelssohn's music. And then they converted it to film with Jack Warner. Kind of Jack Warner brought it in and converted it to film. Apparently, James Cagney broke his leg tobogganing doing on a toboggan during the production. So there's some editing to fix that, but otherwise, this is an attempt to convert a stage production to film. What'd you think of it?
Um, so we'll save Mickey Rooney. Um,
Oh God,
we'll
yeah.
save Mickey Rooney. Um, so this is one of these. This is a movie where I mean, it's beautiful in certain parts of it. There's just certain things that are really, really stunning. I think I it reminds me of like the Cottingsley fairies. Like there's just certain shots. I'm like, I bet they pulled some of those images. There's just the way some of the dancers move and the costumes, and maybe this was just sort of general fairy milieu that the Cottingsley were pulling from. The Cottingsley, if you're not familiar with them, are like
It's the
they were
Doyle
these
fairies, right?
the Doyle, yeah, Arthur Conan Doyle was convinced they were real. They were these little girls who lived in like England, and they made these photos that do look stunningly real of fairies that they claimed that they used to go play with in the woods, and they made like 4 or 5 photos of them and didn't admit that they were fake for a very, very long time. And Arthur Conan Doyle was convinced they were real. And so these little girls were saying how they used to go play with fairies out in the woods, and the photos look pretty good. Like they're pretty good fakes.
But they're
Um,
also clearly pictures of fairies that they stuck in
Yeah,
grass.
but they're pretty good. I mean, but I mean, think about photos from that time period, and then think about these look reasonably real. Like I'm just going to say, like we live in an age of Photoshop, so we're or AI, and these are real enough that if you really wanted to believe, you'd believe. That's on my point. But I do think that they have that sort of Cottingsley fairy feel to them, these photos do. The film does. And it make the thing though that mostly that I feel about it, there's some really I really like Oberon's performance. I actually really like him. There's some really because they make him really dark. Most of them don't do that with him. They make him feel like he's like riding like one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. They sort of make him a
He's
lot darker.
riding like a black
The
horse,
Black
right?
Horse,
And he's
yeah.
dressed in black, and he has this kind of tree thing on his
Thing
head.
coming out. It feels like the fairies got some edge to them. Like they don't feel just sort of they don't feel playful with Oberon. Oberon has some serious edge to him. What it makes me saddest is there's just some of the dancing. And I like I can say I like Nijinsky as much as you can like a choreographer who's you can't really see his work, but I've seen some of it and I like Rites of Spring. I've seen some videos of Rites of Spring. Like I like Nijinsky. And what you see with this is just, man, I really, really wish I could have seen the stage play. There's just certain things when the dancers are kind of coming in and out, and you see certain dancers kind of bounding across what should be a stage. It feels like this should be a stage. I know you did a really good job of making a good movie set here and filming it reasonably well. It doesn't feel like they just stuck a camera in front of a stage. It's not that, but there's just certain things where it's like, this should be on stage, and this would be stunning on stage. And there's just so many frustrating moments where I thought, dang it, I wish I could see all of this, but a camera can't show it, or it shows it in weird blurs, or I can't quite get the deep focus. The eye would be really good on this. So it's a really, really, it feels like that. It feels like a really, really good attempt to convert a stage play to film, and yet because of either just the mediums are too different or because they just didn't have the technology at the time, I feel like it just misses. But there's certain things where it's just so enticing, and it feels like there's just something missing where it doesn't quite work. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it is the dancing you lose, right? I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was choreographed by him, and I can't think of specific dancing in it that jumped out at me because you can't the effect of it. It seems to be is or the effect they were going for, the effect they had on stage was population. They just had a ton of people moving around,
Yeah.
dancing in different patterns, moving against each other. They also do this with sound, which is captured a little bit better in the film, where different people are making sounds. There's kind of yelling. There's overlapping noise. They have characters kind of making odd noises on their own, which sometimes can get annoying. But it's certainly you get this feeling of plentitude. There's just so much, and there's cellophane everywhere. The movie is wrapped in this kind of glowing plastic material. At least that's what it looks like. And you could just imagine this on stage. You can imagine 400 dancers and extras moving
Yeah.
through the house, moving through the theater space. And
And it,
it was an
and I
amphitheater. It was
imagine,
outdoors.
I can just imagine that must have been earth-shatteringly beautiful. Like
Mhm,
it's just that's what this feels like, is an attempt to have captured what I think would have been earth-shatteringly beautiful.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of it is beautiful. I mean, I think
It
the
is, but it's not earth-shattering.
yeah.
It's lovely. But at
Mhm.
certain points it feels like Babes in Toyland. It's just which is fine,
Mm,
but it just sort of has this like Toyland, Toyland. Like, it just sort of has this odd
mm,
1935 film quality. Whereas
mm,
if you put it on stage, this is one of the problems between stage and film.
mm.
Stage, this would have been a phenomenal. On film, I don't know if it gets it. It's good, it's beautiful, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree. I think I enjoyed it more than you did, but
Oh, I didn't dislike it. I want to be clear. I didn't dislike it. I just felt like I missed something. I felt like it was so tantalizing to be like, what was it like?
yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
didn't dislike it. I enjoyed it, except for Mickey Rooney. I did enjoy it, but my frustration with it wasn't that it wasn't good. It was that I just know there was more there. I
Yeah.
know that the actual stage production was better.
Yeah, because
That's my frustration with it.
when you are in an outdoor space and you have 400 people doing choreographed dance around you, that's very different from seeing 400 people in many cuts on a. It's
Yeah.
just not impressive. It's
No.
not that hard to get 400 people together and run around, which is what it looked like. So it isn't.
But you could tell, and I guess this is
Yeah,
where
you
I
could
think he was trying to
tell.
do it, because you could tell people were moving across the camera. You could see people kind of bounding on, and this is where it was like, that person didn't just bound on and then disappear. If this was a stage, they would have had six leaps across the stage, and then other people would have been moving the other direction. So you could see that people were moving in and out of a camera shot. And so that there probably was more. And then, as you said, there's all these other shots of all the other people. And so that it's trying to capture in individual shots what the human eye can capture in one view. And but it's still beautiful.
Yeah, or you can on stage have many things happening at once and let the eye
Yeah.
wander. And this necessarily focuses the eye, which is not to this production's benefit.
But it's still a really good movie. It's worth the time. It just frustrated me because I thought, dang it, I just wish I could have seen this thing live. That was my frustration. Still a great movie, but I found that's
That's
what
frustrating.
frustrated me.
Yeah. I really like the four lovers in this. I liked how they were blocked. They're constantly ping-ponging off each other in a way. They're overlapping each other in a way. I like the movement between the four lovers much, much more than I think in the movement. I'm not saying necessarily the performances in other things. I like how they're directed.
I guess I liked them the best because they didn't. The four lovers are kind of boring, and so I didn't remember them, which is probably for the best
Hmm.
because the only things I remember about the other ones are what I didn't like about them for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. I think the four lovers work too because they're indistinguishable, and he makes them into. It feels like one character. It's just kind of a
Yeah.
messy one character
Yeah,
who's
and that's
running back
why
and
I
forth.
nothing bothered me about them, and they moved the plot forward so I could watch all the other interesting things happen.
I agree with you. I liked Dark Oberon. I think he was less interesting with the text. He kind of
No, but that's fine. Yeah.
fumbled through the text a little bit. Um,
No, the '90s one actually might have been the best with the text, I think, but
you don't think the Peter Hall one?
maybe I just can't remember it. But
Uh, um, but anyway, back to this. So we also had
oh no, is the
Cagney.
Peter Hall is the '60s one?
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't stand him. Anyway,
No, no, no. Peter Hall directed it.
oh, Peter Hall direct, but I mean the actor, the guy who played
Oh,
Oberon.
no.
No, I'm just talking about Oberon, purely Oberon.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the Oberon in the '60s one, the Peter Hall version,
Hmm. Oh,
and I
okay.
didn't. At least I didn't like him at all. I feel like text wise, I didn't mind the '90s one, '30s one. I mean, I don't know. I thought he was fine with the text.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a scarier character though.
Yeah,
I did like that color contrast. Um, what did you think of Cagney as Bottom? That's a weird casting
weird
choice.
casting, and it didn't
Hmm.
work very well. But
Hmm.
he's a bit too. I mean, again, Cagney always feels like he's gonna shoot someone. Like Cagney always feels like he's gonna just lose it and murder a
Mm.
person. So Cagney as Bottom. I didn't think. Did they just cast him because was he well known at this point? Is that why they
I
cast him?
think he was well known at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of has that feeling of yeah, put Cagney in the role of Bottom
Mm.
because the people will come watch him. But it
Mhm.
felt weird. I didn't think he was very good. It literally felt like he was gonna murder someone.
Yeah,
Like it was weird.
he was already in Public Enemy, so playing very famous gangster role, Public Enemy.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that was to get Bottoms in the seats to make a good. That was a good
Ah,
joke, right? That was
that was a
good.
good joke. Yes, yes, I almost laughed. Very good. Yeah, a part of it I think is how he's directed. There's a lot of laughing in it that comes off almost metronomic. That they say a few lines, then laugh out loud, then say a few lines and laugh out loud. That
Like the mechanical sound from a gramophone, to quote Harry Ape.
oh, fair enough. Um, yeah, so it's a little irritating in that sense. But no one is more irritating
Mickey Rooney.
than Mickey Rooney. So he's let's give him some credit. He's about 15 here.
And I have a feeling this might have been the director's fault. When you see an actor make choices that are that bad, it's probably either the director should have edited them out, which sometimes is more a problem with a star, where, I mean, I guess Mickey Rooney was a child star, so maybe it was they didn't want to correct Mickey Rooney. But I have a feeling it's more the director was pushing him in that direction. It gets very, very, very annoying.
Yeah, so Mickey Rooney is Puck, and he does this like loud laugh a lot. Yeah.
It's like Bugs Bunny or like Donald Duck or I don't know. It's cartoonish, I think is what it's meant to be.
Hmm.
But man, is it annoying.
It's incredibly
And
annoying.
it's just over and over and over and over again. And it's just he's just has these weird this is why I've never quite understood the appeal of the Puck role. Um
I understand the appeal of the puck roll. I think is that you have a character who is, yeah, he's obedient, but he's a bit of a bad boy. He gets to do
yeah.
what he wants to do. He gets to screw with people. You're not entirely sure how much of it is a mistake and how much of it is him just having fun. So I get that, and I think that came through in especially Ian Holmes's performance in the Peter Hall version from
Yeah.
1968, where he is just sort of a manic. He's a manic pixie boy. I guess
I mean,
that
yeah.
yeah, that's Ian Holm more than anyone plays him as manic as possible. And with Mickey Rooney, maybe you could call that manic, but it's so grating that you know, I don't know. I stopped trying to attend to what he was trying to do and tried to block him out. But I think you get a good balance with Ian Holm, who is mature enough that he's he's clearly a grounded actor, but he is also really, he goes through the lines fast, and
Yeah, which is
delivers,
fine.
yeah, which works in the choices
The
he's
tongue
making.
thing I think is weird, but
Yeah, yeah. But that seems to be, I think, the appeal of Puck. And the most sympathetic Puck of these three is gotta be, God, what's his name?
Tucci.
Tucci. Thank you, Stanley Tucci. I almost called him Food Guy. Stanley Tucci. He has a book out called "What I Ate in a Year," where he describes everything he ate that year. Anyway,
Didn't know that one.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess just like having seen the Mickey Rooney one, I've just never quite got it because it's like I feel like this maybe it's just because I've never seen a really good Puck.
Hmm.
I never got to see the Dead Poet Society guy do it, so the whole thing. So maybe if I'd seen that production, it was so good he had to kill himself over it, that maybe I would have been more amazed. But it was just sort of. I guess I've never really quite understood the appeal of the character. Like he seems kind of fun, but I've never understood why. Whenever when we did it in high school, everyone was like, "I want to be Puck. I want to be Puck," and I'm like, "Why?" I never quite understood that. But
Yeah, I mean, the play's
I
best
get your
character is
point. I get your point.
Bottom.
But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, Bottom is way better. That's my thing. Is I'm like, Bottom is a much better character. He's much more fun to play.
Hmm. Yeah, he's more fun to play. He's everybody's best friend. I think that's what's so appealing about him too. There's
Except the
there's a
guys pour the wine on him in the
Yeah, so I guess we could transition into Bottom now and talk about them, and maybe move into the 1999 picture a little bit. Um, so Bottom in um, I think Bottom in the 68 version is probably the Bottom that I read when I read the play.
yeah. That's
It's
a good.
closest
It's a
to
good
it.
Bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't dislike the '90s version of Bottom. I think he's actually. I think Kevin Kline does a very different Bottom. I don't think that's the Bottom in the text, but it's you could find that Bottom.
Mhm. Yeah, and the Kevin Kline Bottom is he seems to be a manic depressive. I think that's what he's going for.
I think he's just a man. I think the idea in the '90s one is, and this is why I say like this Bottom is there. This is a Bottom who just he wants something more out of life. This is a guy who, they're the rude mechanicals. I think the normal way you imagine them is just these are dudes who just they're weavers and joiners and carpenters and they want to put on a play. And Bottom is just a guy who thinks he's the leader of them all. He thinks he's the best one of them all, and therein lies the humor. Even if he is the best of them all, he's a terrible actor and he's terrible at these kind of things. And that's the humor of it. Fine. That's I think the normal thing. The '90s one is sort of this idea of Bottom as a dreamer, as a person who really thinks he can do something more than what he currently is. And there's sort of this almost kind of tragic Falstaffian quality to that, where this is a guy who just he's not any better than anybody else, but he wants to be and he sees himself as it. And that I think is where they're pulling a bit more out of it and they're making him more ridiculous of him wearing that fancy white suit and sitting at the cafe drinking his coffee. And clearly this is not a guy who should be doing any of those things. He's a fool. He's a overloaded fool. But you therefore they build sympathy for him and I think it works. But I think that's the different sort of character they're going with. But you're right. It's there in the text, but they're accentuating or pulling out a thing you could see there that's not ever emphasized, and it's not really what the character is. The '50s '60s version is more what the really what Bottom is in the text.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you make about him being Falstaffian in the Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline is the actor who plays it in the 1990s version. And Bottom and Falstaff do have a lot in common. They do have sort of self-aggrandizement, tendency towards self-aggrandizement. They both have somewhat impressive, I think Falstaff is very impressive, and Bottom has somewhat less impressive imaginative capacities.
Yeah.
But Bottom doesn't have the sort of capacity for melancholy or understanding it that Falstaff has.
No.
Falstaff really does that have that in doses, and that balances out his kind of jollity and his funness. Bottom's everybody's buddy. He doesn't have that kind of capacity for melancholy. He doesn't even have that great capacity for kind of sexual interest. When he's
No,
this
he
is
doesn't seem
something.
to care. He doesn't seem to care.
Yeah,
He
it was.
wants food. He wants food.
He's
He wants.
far more interested in Master Mustard Seed and Cobweb than he is in Titania.
Yeah, he wants food, and he doesn't care. And that's why I'm saying I'm not saying that that's actually what bottom is, but you could find those aspects there.
Yeah, and it's fine they make changes. I'm not
Yeah.
judging them for that. It's just looking at it. But there does seem to be. I think you're right. He's the dreamer who he seems to get really blue when the dream is interrupted. When the wine is dropped on him, he seems like crushed.
Yeah.
Just he's forlorn, and then he goes home to his wife. That's his
I
wife, right?
think it's his wife.
Yeah, he goes home to his wife. He has a wife in the '90s version, and is you see him just sitting on the bed, just just depressed. He's
Yeah.
done. That's something they've added in, and I think it works fine.
I think it's fine. I
Yeah,
don't think it's a bad addition. It's not really what bottom is, but it's fine.
yeah, and I think Kevin Kline is worth watching through the '90s production.
Yeah.
I think it works really nicely. I do love my favorite part is Bottom talking to the fairies, though, talking to Master Mustard Seed and
Yeah.
talk about how like, oh, the cows are gonna eat you. Haha.
Ah, Master Mustard Seed, I am familiar with you.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. It's such a like a lovely little bit, and I think Michelle Pfeiffer is kind of great as Titania.
yeah, she's a good Titania. I
Yeah.
actually thought what's her name in the '60s one is good too, actually.
Oh,
Um,
Judy
Judi
Dench.
Dench. I think
Yeah,
Judi Dench is
I think
pretty
she's
good.
great. Yeah, yeah. There's a difference.
Judi Dench does probably the best with the text of
Yeah.
anyone, of any of the ones we've looked at. She does the best with the text.
Mm-hmm. I think they all do in the '60s one. Um,
I don't like Oberon in the '60s
okay,
one.
fair enough.
You think he does a good job with the text?
I think it was fine. I don't remember it jumping out at me.
I just remember being kind of just irritated with him the
Uh,
whole time.
hmm
Maybe it's just like my opinion with that I realized as I watched the '60s version is like '60s fashion and style is really kind to women. Like women, like they all look beautiful. Their hair is beautiful. Their costumes are beautiful. They all look great. And the men, I'm like, you all look like homeless douchebag. Like, why do you all look terrible? Like, and I don't know if this is just like '60s style. Like, '60s style was very cruel to men. Like they all look awful. None of the men there look even remotely attractive or
Yeah, the
appealing. I mean,
Demetrius and Lysander in 1968 are unfortunate looking in that
I
production.
mean, it was so weird when I saw the women come up because I didn't know it was Helen Mirren, and I was thinking, I'm like, oh, that like, oh, that woman is very attractive, and then actually, and when I saw Helena, I knew, I'm like, I know who that is. Like, there was something about the mannerisms, and she would kind of the way she would tip her head and say things. I'm like, I know her from something, but I couldn't figure it out. She's the old lady in Game of Thrones. She's the old
Oh,
lady. She's the old lady who does who's I don't she eventually kills Joffrey. She's the one who kills
mhm.
Joffrey.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that's Helena
Oh,
in
that's
these
Diana
movies.
Rigg. Oh, okay. I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, and I
She's
went,
very pretty.
she's very pretty too. So I thought, oh, these women are beautiful. The women are absolutely beautiful. And then, and then they showed Demetrius and Lysander. I went, those are very unattractive men. Why did they pick them? Like these are men. They have such. They look so surly and forlorn,
Yeah, I
and
know.
they sort of
Michael,
have
I think
these,
it's Michael Warner or David Warner. David Warner as Lysander
and they have
is
such
really
droopy faces. Yeah, they're
frowny.
very frowny and droopy. And then Oberon has this weird beard thing.
And
I
the
don't know.
hair, the
Yeah,
hair
the
was
hair
like
thing.
had Oberon's hair has three like buns, I think.
I don't know. And I was so distracted by it throughout the whole movie. I thought, and it's just this is the only thought that came to my head was, man, the '70s, '60s fashion and just style was really good to women, and just men got
They look like
away.
marching band
Yeah, the
nerds.
men just got away with looking like just trash. Like, I don't know what it was, but 60s fashion was really bad for men, and I don't know what it was. And so I just found the Oberon character really bothered me with his beard. And again, I kind of got obsessed with the looks of them, but and it bothered me. So maybe he did do a good job with the text, and I just couldn't. He bothered me. Um, Compared to all of the women I thought the women in those productions were the
Were
best,
great. Yeah.
were great. They were
Yeah.
almost all across. This is a better play for women in general anyway, I think. Overall they just look great. Everyone there does.
Yeah. Diane Riggs Helena was my favorite.
Yeah,
I love Helen Mirren. I think she's very
she was
good in
fine. She
this.
was fine. There was nothing special about her.
Yeah, but
Judi
Diane
Dench
Rigg,
is great. Judi Dench is
Judi Dench
really
is
good.
wonderful.
Really good.
Yeah, um, as Titania. But there's some Diane Rigg has this. She's just so pretty, and she has
Yeah.
this kind of like weird upward pointed nose too. And they seem to know where. I mean, this is not a well filmed movie. It's again a conversion from a stage production.
This movie feels like it was filmed for an AP English production on a weekend with an iPhone, where a bunch of them were told to show up and say the lines, and they memorized them 6 seconds before the shot, because each shot is only about 6 seconds long before they cut to the character walking in a totally different location, so, continuing their monologue.
Yeah,
It is
they
a but was that intentional? Was
Yeah, oh,
this like
I think the disjointed editing was intentional because they do it so much. It has to be intentional because they'll talk,
but it
they'll
doesn't
say a few
work.
lines, they'll cut to another place, and the character will be somewhere else and finish another few lines. They'll cut to the character like sitting in a tree, and then she'll say a few lines in the tree. Um, I,
But
I
it doesn't work,
I'm not
right? I mean,
entirely sure why they're doing that, other than to
is it
give
supposed
it
to be
bounce.
dream-like?
I
I didn't know if it was supposed to be dream-like, but then I thought
maybe
any dream for well, if you were going to do that, firstly,
you have to do it in the dream, not just in
any
the wake.
dream in which this happens is going to, a person would awake from this dream, because dreams are fluid. They're not usually sharp, 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 sharp. Like they don't transition quite that way. Like sometimes, yeah, you might be in a room and then turn, like in, David Lynch. Unfortunately,
Rest in peace.
yeah,
Yeah.
rest in peace.
Mhm.
But David Lynch, when he does it, you tend to just look at a chair and it's empty, and then look away, and then look back and be like, oh, there's someone sitting in the chair. You don't tend to look in the chair, have a weird jarring noise, and then have a body appear in the chair. Like, that's the dream doesn't work that way. So that was odd, just aesthetically. But also, even if you were going to do it as a dream, you can't do that in the sequences when they're not in the dream, to your point. Like, I think you're just saying, like, in the dream, like when they're in the court, that's supposed to be the waking world, and then they go to the forest, that's the dream. They kind of do that a little better when they come back from the forest. They actually, because I was wondering if they were going to stop
Yeah,
doing it.
it's Act Five is localized. They
Yeah,
don't
Act
bounce
5
around.
they stopped doing it, but they did it in Act 1, which means, okay, so that wasn't, you weren't just doing these quick weird cuts and weird noises and stuff. I just thought it's a horribly filmed movie.
It's they're trying to film a stage play. It doesn't look great. There's no real lighting aesthetic to it at all.
But I got the feeling it was, I mean, to your point, it kind of feels intentional. Like, it feels like Andy Warhol just filming the Empire State Building for 8 hours. Like, it sort of had this feeling of, we're going to intentionally do this as some sort of weird aesthetic
Yeah,
choice.
what it feels like to me is I feel like Peter Hall's idea, I wouldn't call it a thesis, but his idea of the play is that, and I keep saying manic in this episode, but it feels like a manic episode. That I think that he
Yeah.
sees this play as basically, and I don't think he's wrong if that's how he sees the play, which is like all of these characters are just jumping at each other. Like the four lovers are completely out of control, and
Yeah.
it makes sense that you would just transform one lover to be attracted to another person because they're idiots.
Yeah, they're
They're
idiots. Yeah,
idiots led entirely by
Lord, what
loin.
fools these mortals be? Like,
Yeah,
that's the point.
they're driven crazy by their loins, and so they're just
Yeah,
running around. And it's sort of, but Bottom is also sort of manic. And the fairy world is also a little crazy. Puck is super manic. He,
But you need contrast in order for that to
yeah,
work.
I,
I guess I could logically justify what they did. It doesn't work though,
but I
right?
think you're
I
right.
think
I
that's
think
the
you
problem.
need, I think what you need is an aesthetic distinction in the editing when they go into the fairy world. I think you need, I think you need it to like be a little calmer sometimes. There isn't enough variety, and then it would work well. But I think effectively what the pleasure of the 69 version keeps going in 68. Apparently it premiered in 69. The 69 version was is that you get really great Shakespearean actors
Performances, yeah. The
performances.
performances are especially amongst the women are the best.
Mhm.
And Ian Holmes is fine. Again, besides his weird dog tongue thing,
Yeah.
which they just kept doing. They just kept having Ian Holm go, like, stop. Like, what is the point of that? But he's very good. But you do see the best performances. If you could take the sort of aesthetic of the 30s version and take the performances of the 60s version, they could have some really great stuff
Mhm.
going on.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Moving into the 90s version.
In which someone read an article about a bike and decided that was a good
So,
that was a good focal point
so
for a movie.
we should, yeah, mention this. So this is actually a movie. It's not a stage production lifted into a movie. Nothing like that. They decided to make a movie. And they've decided to move, as often you do, Shakespeare from ancient Athens to
Italy.
1890s Italy.
Yeah.
And it starts with the popularity. It starts with an intertitle telling us how popular bikes suddenly are coming to be in this part of Italy. And the bike is now becoming very important. And the characters throughout the movie do, in fact, ride bikes. And
They
Puck
ride
at
bikes.
one point finds a bike and is like terrified of a bike. I mean, he treats it like he's a person from the 5th century finding a spacecraft. I don't know why he's so confused by two wheels and handlebars. It's a really odd premise to hang this movie on, and there's a lot of value in this movie. It's not my favorite.
It's just if you took the movie, fine, have the bikes. Bikes are totally fine, whatever. It's the fact that they put the intertitle in
Yeah,
because
it
then it makes
screams
me feel like the
thesis.
bike is really important. Like it literally feels like somebody read a book in which the author said the bike to the 1870s was as important as the car was to the 1950s. It was a sense of freedom and revolutionarily, revolution, whatever this sort of sense of
It's a
freedom that came
revolutionary thing
that gave us freedom and
freedom
freedom of
that
movement
people
and
didn't have
all
before.
the kids were obsessed with this thing and someone read that book and went, I gotta put it into Shakespeare, and then put it in an intertitle and drew really clear attention to the bikes. Like, it was just like if you hadn't put the intertitle in, it would have been fine.
Hmm.
No one, I don't think I would have thought anything more of it, right? Like
No,
you just
no.
would have been like, oh, it's kind of cool. They're riding bikes around the woods. Yeah, I get it. This is a modernization and bikes are around.
Hmm.
Why did you put the intertitle in to make it seem like this was a movie about bikes?
Yeah,
Right?
it comes off as a thesis picture. Like
Yeah.
the thesis of this picture is the importance of the bicycle in late 19th century Italy.
Yeah.
And
It was just like I
and
have
and,
no
and
idea.
also Midsummer Night's Dream.
And we'll never mention the word bike because it's Shakespeare, but we're going to have them everywhere. And we have intentionally drawn your attention
Mm,
to the bike. So
yeah.
every time a bike shows up in this movie, I feel like I have to pay attention to it because you told me it was important. Like, what
Yeah.
an odd
Mm,
choice.
yeah,
If you just did it to the intertitle, it would have been fine. But you drew my attention to it. And now I'm distracted for this whole movie.
yeah.
It
And
was weird.
it's really weird. The Puck, so there's one scene where Puck, played by Stanley Tucci, finds one of the lovers' bikes, and he's completely confused by it, and he turns on the light. They all have little lights. He turns on the light and jumps backwards and whatnot, and it's a really strange scene because maybe he's never seen a bike before, but it's not a terrifying thing,
Object, yeah, it's
right?
just
It's
sitting
just
there.
yeah, I need to be like, oh, the wheels move and they ride on the wheel. You know what I mean? Like it would be that much of a revelation. I don't. There's something this movie's trying to do with the modern world coming in and the fairy kingdom being the something else, something that's not modern or ancient or fantastical that's going away, but it doesn't land. I don't
Well, this is why the
quite get it.
60s version, the thing I liked about the 60s version that I think it nailed, really nailed, and this is a sense that I don't think we get, this is I don't think we get in America is, and the only reason I have any sense of it is having lived in London for a year, and you see it this really strongly in the play Jerusalem, which I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, and I love that movie. That like the British have a really they like it's like the Robin Hood thing. There's this really strong sentimental attachment to like the woods and this sort of ideal of living in the woods. This comes out in As You Like It, and it's a Shakespearean thing. And there's this sense of the woods as being a place where you go to where everything is totally different and the modern world fades away. And there's a sense that in the modern world that is really going away. You're losing the sort of place to escape to. If you wanted in the 16th century to go 17th century to get away, you could go to the woods. It was there. You could leave modernity behind. But in the 21st century, the woods are being wiped out. You can't leave anymore. And the 60s version, I feel like captured that sense that there's this sense of England wanting to get out, and that was there. In this version, it's just weird because yeah, I think they were trying to go for something of the modern world is invading the fairy kingdom with the bikes and the thing with the records. So I
The
feel like
record scene is, yeah, that's a weird one.
it was a weird scene. This is one of the Shakespearean plays that kind of it doesn't quite fall into it, but sometimes Shakespearean adaptations have a tendency to get cute and to just try to be like, look what we can do. I said it's like the setting Macbeth on Mars, and you're like, look how funny it is. Look what we can do. We can do anything with Shakespeare. He's timeless. We can set him anywhere. And they have a tendency to get cute with it and just play with weird things that they can insert in there. And this movie doesn't fall into that trap entirely. It's not a bad adaptation, but it has these weird things like the record player scene where they just like why have this? Why have the fairies stealing random objects from there and then obsessed with mirrors? And it was just like this is a weird thing. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're doing with it.
Yeah, and we should detail the record scene. So they play two records, and they're operas, and they're the records with gramophones, and they in one scene give Puck fruit on a record, which actually
Not
looks.
Puck Bottom.
Excuse me, Bottom. One of the fairies gives Bottom food on a record, and he takes it and puts it on the record player, and it starts playing. And they all seem very surprised. Like Titania seems
It seems like he's a god.
surprised.
This is the like, oh, he's a
Yeah,
god.
like I can't believe he did this. Like how did this happen? And then later they just play a record.
And
They
they
just
seem very upset to have to play the records because they're tired of listening to Bottom when they play the
yeah.
record later.
hmm And it's very I don't know why that's there. It just seems the impression I got.
The
This
impression
is
I got was it was the
the
idea of the modern world
modern
invading
world.
the
Yeah.
fairy world.
Yeah, that the modern world is going away, that we don't need, excuse me, the fairy world is going away, that people in the modern world won't need it they won't need magic anymore because you have technology.
But I don't know if, I mean, I agree that that's there. I don't think that's
It's
what the movie was saying,
I
though.
don't think it's landing that message. And Midsummer is a really bad film to attempt to communicate that anyway, or a very bad play to attempt to communicate that.
But I don't even think it was attempting to communicate that because I agree that's what something like Jerusalem does, the play Jerusalem does. And that actually does play with fairies. That has the concept of are fairies real, are giant,
Our
that is
giants
actually
real,
playing
yeah.
that is playing with that concept. This just felt like again, this just felt like cute. Like let's just put this thing with this thing, and we're not we don't know what we're saying with it. We're not even trying to show anything with it. We're just being cute. Because isn't it funny that the fairies don't know what a bike is? And isn't it funny that the fairies don't know what a phonograph record is? As if like these objects have existed for hundreds, not hundreds of years, but 50 years or 20 years or 10 years. Like this is the first time that the fairies have gone into the real world and stolen these things at this exact moment. Like it doesn't, it felt, fine, play this game with Bottom playing a record and they didn't know how they worked. But I don't think it was making a comment on anything other than, isn't that funny?
I
Like,
get, but it's such an odd highlight. It's so odd that your mind goes to, why is this odd thing here? This must do something. And the bike thing is also so odd that you connect the two odd things together. You say, okay, this is what is being interjected here. There is some commonalities I can imagine between, here's the new thing, the bike. I guess here's the new thing, the gramophone. It must be some kind of comment on the fairies not understanding new things, or the modern world. But I don't
but
think
I don't think
anything
it
gets.
feels sad. It doesn't feel elegiac. Like
I
there's no
Yeah.
sense of something lost. Like that could have worked if you try to create a sense of something lost. And but that's not there. It felt like it was the I'm gonna say something, but I don't know what I think about it. Or
And it could have been fine if the fairies, instead of being surprised by the gramophone, they serve food on records and then just play the record after they eat or while they eat. That's actually kind of cool. I would
yeah.
That would look good. So that kind of comment, that whatever it is, doesn't really work very well. Um, Things that did work well, I like Stanley Tucci as Buck.
I like Stanley Tucci as Buck. I think he was I found him the least annoying. I did kind of find Ian Holm even sometimes as annoying, and I found Mickey Rooney insanely annoying. Puck, yeah, Tucci's Puck. Stanley Tucci's Puck
Pucci's
felt
Puck was.
Stucci's Stanley Tucci's Puck was fine. Like I thought it was a good performance. I had no problems with it, and that was the best Puck I've ever seen because he didn't annoy me. So therefore, I was fine. Oberon was fine. Michelle Pfeiffer, as I actually kind of liked her, as I thought she was very good. She has the best sense of fairy-esque, but like, whoa, don't mess with her. That was she had the best in that sense. In the sense that the 1930s Oberon had the best sense of, wow, he's cool, don't mess with him.
Mhm.
Like they both, if I would like to see those two together. They would be an interesting
Yeah.
combination. Um,
She doesn't
and
have the text that the skill with the text that Judi Dench
no,
does, but that's fine. They
that's
actually,
fine.
it's edited in such a way that it doesn't seem that apparent.
Judi Dench has the best handle in the text of anyone here. She's by far the best Shakespearean actress of them all. Um, and yeah, the rest of them are fine. Like we got our our Lysander, as you said, one of the boring parts, the part that I played. But we had the same dude who played the Earl of Richmond in Richard II
Yeah.
last week.
Dominic
So
West, who is
Dominic West is it's
went on
reappearing.
from there to have you seen The Wire? The HBO
No,
show
I
The
never
Wire?
saw it. I
I
never
haven't
saw it.
seen it either, but that was his moment, right? I think The Wire, which came out right after this, but he's fine in this.
I thought The Wire was recent. Okay, this.
No, after this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, shortly
The
after
Wire's
this
the one
movie.
in Baltimore, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think Batman, what was his name?
Oh, Christian Bale.
Bale, yeah. He's
Fine.
fine. The one that drove me crazy was Clarissa
Callista
Flockhart, or
Flockhart.
Callista. What is it? Callista Flockhart.
Callista Flockhart.
It's like
Oh me. Oh my.
it's everything's on the same pitch. She's mugging. She's also mugging. A lot of it is she's heavy. It's like heavy panting, breathing through every line. Every line she's panting, no matter what is happening. She's incredibly exhausted all the time, and she just has She's mugging through the whole performance, and it drove me up a wall.
No, she wasn't great.
Yeah.
Who plays Hermia? I don't even remember. Is Hermia famous?
I think she's the one who's the least famous. Her name is
I don't remember who she is. I just remember the version we did because I waited
Anna
for one.
Friel.
Oh, she sounds famous. She's done something.
Ooh, she got prettier older. She's only 48. Wow. Um,
She's done something. I've heard
yeah,
that
she's
name.
in a Netflix series called Marcella.
Mm,
That was her big thing. She was in Pushing Daisies. Was
I've
another.
seen her in something, but I can't remember what. But but she was fine. I mean, what I was waiting for is that when we did our production when I was in high school, I still remember the girl who played Helena, and she had the line reading I loved was the "Oh hell, oh spite" when she realized it when she thinks that Lysander and Demetrius when Demetrius starts like trying to hit on her and Lysander already has been, and she thinks that they're in cahoots, and it's the "Oh hell." Oh, Spite. And I still remember the girl who did that line reading in our production. She was so good with that one line. And I just remember thinking it was one of the funniest things. And the audience loved how she did it. And no one caught it. No one, I was waiting for someone to do like a really good job with it. And I'm like, I find it fun to find that the high school, high school actress 25 years ago could nail that one line in the best way, and none of these other actresses could get it. It is kind of fun. It's what's fun about Shakespeare sometimes is that even a high school student can nail a
Mhm.
line and just in a way that no one else, but all these professional actresses could not quite get it. And that was the best line reading you're going to hear of it. Whatever she did with it, it was the best line reading I heard of those kind of Shakespeare. So that
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah, yeah. She was fine. I think she had a better command of the text.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David Stratham as Theseus is
Fine. Oh
fine.
yeah, he was fine.
He was fine,
I
you
kind
know.
of liked Hippolyta. She might have been my favorite Hippolyta.
Oh,
I don't know who
maybe.
she was, but she has a slight French accent, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
she's a
that's
French.
nice. You make clear that she's foreign." The one in the 1960s version just looked like Xena Warrior Princess, which
It's
I guess
true. She's yeah.
Hippolyta is
Yeah.
essentially Xena Warrior Princess,
Hmm.
but it was just sort of odd to see that in the 1960s. Just be like,
Yeah, I think I had a problem with the actress in the 90s version. I couldn't, she seemed pissed at him. And then when the lovers got together, she wasn't pissed anymore. So I guess the idea is that,
well, the consensus is she pulls him aside, and he, because
mhm.
that's
Yeah, oh
usually the
yeah.
way it gets performed. Other than in the which one was it that they didn't seem? Oh, in the '60s version, they never seemed to have a problem. Hippolyta and Theseus never seemed to not get along. Usually, the idea is Hippolyta and Theseus don't get along in the same way that Titania and Oberon don't get along, and once the one gets fixed, the other gets fixed. And in the '90s version, I think the implication is Theseus doesn't want, is going to say like, well, Hermia still has to marry Lysander or
Oh, and
can't
she
marry,
corrects it. Is
and
that,
she pulls him aside, and then he says, "Okay, I will agree to it." And then she's like, "Okay, now I like you because you agreed to give these lovers I have no idea who they are, but apparently I have a fondness for them."
yeah.
And this is more a Shakespearean thing. Like,
Mm.
fine, we accept this thing because you've should told me I should, and
Yeah,
I think that's what's going on.
I get conflicts in Shakespearean comedies. You can kind of measure different Shakespearean comedies by how easy the conflict goes away. And Midsummer is one of the conflict just goes away.
Yeah.
It's it
Actually,
just
we should have. I guess we transitioned into comedies. We didn't talk about comedies next week.
oh yeah, yeah.
We'll talk about it next week.
We will talk about it next week. Are we doing As You Like It next week?
Yeah. I mean
As
that's a good one to transition into. And I
yeah.
mean this is a good one. This is a good one to start our comedy discussion on because it's just so floofy and it's fantasy and it's fun and you can do it in high school and this one doesn't really require too much trouble. Some Shakespearean comedies require trouble because you have to really think about the problems that are being presented. Some Shakespearean comedies you have to have trouble with because they've got their they're racist or sexist or they have some fundamental problem with their
Mm,
performance. But this one's so easy.
mm.
No one questions it. No one has trouble with it. It's fantasy and it's fun. It's the magic flute of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
we
it's a
go
good one.
out and we enjoy it and we have fun with it. So this
Yeah,
was a good one for our first comedy
it's a
one,
good
but
one. And when we do As You Like It, I think is pretty similar to this, with the exception of the magic isn't. There's no
there's no magic.
magic.
It has a similar contrast between court and
Hmm.
woods, which is interesting, but As You Like It is a much more mature play.
It's more mature. It also has, and we'll see. I think Kevin Kline is also coming back
Oh, is he?
next
Okay.
week. Yeah, playing Jaques. And I
You
think
know who also comes back as having been in a production of As You Like It? Me.
who did
Yeah,
you play?
I played Orlando.
Did I see it?
I don't know. Maybe you didn't.
Was it in Red Feather?
Yeah, it was Red Feather. It was in the
Oh, I did
park.
see it. Did I
Yeah.
see it?
I
Uh.
don't know, dude, but this is, we're going through all my Shakespearean
Experiences.
experiences.
Yeah, you'd be a
Um,
good Orlando. Mhm.
thanks. 20 years later.
Any other thoughts we have on Midsummer Night's Dream?
No, I think
With
I think we hit them all.
All right. Yeah, let's wrap this up here. If you enjoyed Midsummer Night's Dream, check out, oh my God, there's so many of them. There's a 1909 film, a 1959 film, a 1969 film. So don't confuse that with the 1968 film. There's a 2017 movie, a 2016 movie. There's a Midsummer Night's Rave, which is
This is
not.
baby's first Shakespeare. Like that's they should
Yeah.
just like everyone's like we can make this one. We can do this
Yeah.
one.
Strange Magic is apparently based on it. Dream of a Summer Night, the children's Midsummer Night's Dream, a Caribbean Dream. So I would recommend a Midsummer Night's Rave, because
It's a great title.
it's a great title, and
And
you
I'm
can
sure
reward
someone's taking hits
titles.
of E, and that's going to be the drops of things on their eye.
You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found.
Join us next time when we discuss Much Ado About Nothing.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week, we'll be discussing Much Ado About Nothing. Pat, if you could play one role in this play, what would it be?
I mean, I'd love to play Benedict, but I'm not Benedict. I love that character. He's one of my favorite Shakespeare characters. I would love to play him, but I never would be able to. I'm not that witty, and I don't have that charming physical appearance that I think you need to have. So I would not actually play that role. I would like to play the constable. I think it would be fun to play. I think he would be a fun role to play.
Dogberry?
Yeah, Dogberry. I enjoy his malapropisms. I think he's fun. I think he's got a lot. I actually really liked how he's done in the Joss Whedon one.
Yes. Yeah, that was
I
one of my
actually
favorite parts of that.
really liked that.
Yeah.
But that's what I think. I think I would like to be Dogberry. I think I could enjoy it. I think I'd have fun with it. I think I'd get a few laughs out of it, and it's the most appropriate role for me. What about you?
I'm somewhere between I'm reaching the age where I think either a Don Pedro or a Don John. I might be too old for Don John at this point. Um,
You could do John John.
I
I don't
could
think it matters.
probably, yeah.
I
Um,
don't know
I
why you'd want to, but I think you could.
I think I would be fine in those roles. I think kind of like the older advisor or the evil guy, bastard character. I've played bastards
Oh, you
before.
wouldn't be the wait, you wouldn't be the prince? You're saying
No,
the
no,
prince?
the Don. So Don Pedro, who Denzel Washington plays.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
he's the
that's the best role
prince,
for you.
Prince of
Yeah,
Aragon. Yeah,
yeah. That's
him
the best role.
or yeah, I think I would be good in that role.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a good role for you.
yeah, Don John would be fun. There's not a lot there. That's the
That's
only
I mean, it's so
problem.
boring. I don't think I would
Is
want that role.
yeah, it would, but I think I could see myself getting cast in it. I could say that.
Yeah.
I think I could do that. But I think the Dom Pedro Prince of Aragon would be the role for me. Again, like I would like to play Benedict, but again, Benedict is so
He's so charming and fun and
kind of boyish too. Yeah, I'm just like that's the thing. Audience who I can't imagine there's any audience who doesn't know me personally at this point, but like I am not boyish in any way, so I don't think
No,
I can.
I saw a pretty awful production of this, but I saw okay, well, we'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about it
Okay,
next
we'll
week.
talk about it next week. All right.